Hello, I'm Maria Banos Jordan, founder and president of the Texas Familias Council. I welcome everyone to this special conversation today that we're having with a wonderful colleague and friend, Pastor Clyde Harden. And Pastor Clyde and I met during the pandemic to work on several home repair disaster recovery projects in some of our most underserved communities. And so it was a blessing to meet him and to work with him and continue to work with him through the pandemic and now in the recovery stage of all this. And I asked Pastor Clyde to join us today because he brings a very unique perspective as a man of faith, but also a community builder in many respects. He makes a great impact in his local communities in Texas and beyond. And so welcome, Pastor Clyde. It's so good to have you with us today.
Thank you for having me.
So I didn't do your introduction justice because you do wear many hats in the community. And so if you don't mind sharing a little bit about the many roles that you have taken on.
Yeah, no problem. First of all, I want to say thank you to Maria. Met this beautiful soul. I gotta say that exactly, she's a beautiful soul. Beyond just the woman she is, she does so many good things, and so I thank her. I met with her through a colleague of her name is Sonia Myers with the I think it's Hope Disaster Recovery, and so just a great relationship. But like she said, I have had the opportunity and still have the opportunity of carrying many hats. And how it all began. I'm a local community guy, left my small town of Cold Spring, Texas, and came back back in 2010 and started a ministry here in Cold Spring, Texas. And like most pastors, you see so many things happen from, each hurricane coming through or different, the winter storm, and you feel as though that it must be something we can do. And in that thought process, in that heart, we already had a nonprofit organization, which me and my wife was a founder and president of, called the Cindy County Outreach Committee, which just started off with just being a Thanksgiving dinner. It's good to be so much more, especially during the pandemic. So as a pastor and now a nonprofit organization, in 2020, we also started a business. Didn't really know, just following the voice of God, and the business end up being a construction company that was the answer to restoring some homes from the winter storm. Throughout that journey, we felt as though that the funding was coming through pretty quickly, but the case management of it was kind of bottlenecking everything. And so someone volunteered in our nonprofit, never intended for the nonprofit to match up with all this, but God knows what he's doing. And our nonprofit wound up being a case manager for over 90% of all the repairs that we were able to do. We was able to repair over 250, almost 300 homes from the winter storm until the end of 2022, still into 2023. We're still repairing homes, and that's how I met Miss Maria. So in the end, what hats do we carry? What hat do we carry? It's the hat of hope, and conviction. We have a conviction and when we see people without hope, and so we try to find every way possible to restore hope, whether it's through, our nonprofit, through feeding people, our church by giving them a place to worship, or our for-profit by restoring some of the things they lost through founders like Maria and Sonia Myers and many others who are out there who are canvassing the areas to bring in the financial infrastructure to restore homes in ways that some people can't afford to. So that's a little bit about myself.
That's a lot, a lot. I mean, you really, you and your family are a unit of just amazing force. And the fact that you have kept your heart and your ear open to listening to God and to the community itself, and open to working with diverse communities. And so I have personally appreciated that so much, because it is hard to go into a community where there is so much need and sometimes so much fear. And a lot of our families, carry a lot of that burden every day, and sometimes are reluctant to ask for help. And so I feel like you and your family have been a blessing that have come in and have, calmed those fears and made those avenues open to be able to connect those resources. So thank you again so much for all that your whole family does.
And I have to add, you did make a highlight that I cannot ignore. You know, how can anyone do as much as God has allowed me to do what I have in support of my wife, of my daughters? I got three beautiful daughters. My oldest is Kiana, she's 20. My middle is Alana, she's 18. My baby is Madison, she's 14. My marriage, I've been married to the same beautiful woman for over 20, almost 23 years. Tanya, and they don't allow me to do it. They do it with me.
Yes.
If someone say, how can someone do so much? Your family has got to be involved. They got to see the vision. If not, you're going to be absentee because your passion is pulling you from your family. But I am fortunate. My daughter gets out the truck with the pad. My wife is making
Yep.
appointments. My daughters are, it's a family thing because, God had broke our heart together. And, I think this is the biggest problem, right? We are minorities, helping minorities. And you got to look at that. So we can say we're, poor me, we're a minority, or we can say, hey, let's figure out what resources out there for everyone, and let's present resources. So we have everyone, and this has been a rewarding a way that we was able to gain relationships, build, responsibilities, gain knowledge and understanding of what's out there as resources, and once we open the door, we're going to leave it cracked so we can come back and open it wide for everyone who else can come behind us, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. And yes, your wife and your daughters have been out there in the field with me sometimes, and they follow up, and I mean it really has been a beautiful thing to witness. And you're right. And I think another very valuable piece of the work that you do is um, that I feel like you're very open into walking into these sacred spaces of communities where there are um different people from different backgrounds. The fact that you and I, as two different ethnic communities, but we do find that common ground, and that we understand that there is power in that, and that we're going to find solutions sometimes where there's so few resources. And I
Yeah,
think that's really part of the blessing of working across cultures.
me meeting you, I would not at all try to hide the fact I was afraid. The first time I went to one of the communities we had the opportunity to work in, I pulled up and I saw, I saw hurt. I saw neglect. That's the word I'm going to use. I saw neglect. And when I saw it, I didn't know how to approach it. I didn't know how, because I didn't know the mindset that was in that house. I didn't know the mindset that was behind those things I saw in the front yard. And so I was pretty intimidated. And to see you walk out there in the community and own that community, it gave me peace, right? But when I got behind the door, it was the same person that I am. The same person I was raised around. It didn't matter the ethnicity, it didn't matter the background, it don't even
Right.
matter the front yard, right? It didn't matter the circumstances. I went to prison one time and I preached in a prison, and I was afraid walking in prison, because I was thinking I was literally going to a cage mindset. I guess I don't know what it was. I was thinking when I got in there, I found out it was just a man behind a wall that he couldn't get out of. No different, still a man, right? And that made it so much easier. So it's one thing to be in your community, help your community, but you just don't know the understanding of other communities. And I use that word strongly, community. Someone said before that my town is a small town. It's predominantly Caucasian American, and it's very segmented. Very segmented. You have the wealthy, you have the poor, you have the African American, you have the Caucasian. It's very few Hispanic in the community here, right? And someone asked before, they said, "Do you think your town has a race problem?" I said, "No, our town don't have a race problem. Our town have a community problem." I said, "The problem is we all operate in our own communities and we understand only our communities." I said, the only way we're going to overcome that boundary of segregation does not automatically define racism.
Right.
Segregation defines a lack of understanding of others that's sitting right next door to you.
Yes.
And crossing those cultural boundaries, sitting in a room at your award ceremony, hearing a young lady sing from the bowels of her ancestors. That woman blessed me so much at that award ceremony, hearing her sing and understanding, what's really going on, behind eyes you've never seen before. Maria, you introduced me to a whole nother culture. To now, I am one of my goals on my vision board. I got to learn Spanish this year. I literally need to learn.
Okay. Hey, that's a hefty challenge, but I think you can make it. I think you'll do it.
I have.
And actually that brings up a good point. I do want to make that point too, because um a lot of times, and especially in social services, organizations or agencies are reluctant to go out into communities that they don't know or they're unfamiliar with, sometimes because of the language barrier or the cultural differences, or like what you said, sometimes you have your own fear or your own insecurity of walking into something, into the unknown. um, but there is so much that comes once you take that first step.
Oh, wow.
And it was clear to me, by your approach and going into these communities and working directly with these families, your ability to empathize and to respect the dignity of the family, regardless of the circumstances that they were living in.
Yeah.
And that comes across and speaks a different language, a higher language. And so once we're able to get to that point, the other things easily are overcome, even if we don't speak the same technical language.
Yeah.
We begin to understand one another. And so yes, I mean, I think there's so much wisdom and lessons to learn in that piece. And thinking back now, Pastor Clyde, we were just talking about the 3 years. That does seem like lost time, even though there were so much that we did and learned. But in the beginning, when there was so much fear and we didn't know what we were about to face, in the communities you serve, within your church, or, the communities that you serve around San Jacinto, what was the biggest challenge you saw in those first few months when we understood that there was something bigger than we weren't used to dealing with?
I hate to say it, but one word: ignorance. I mean, just ignorant of the whole concept. And when you have something, and I don't use ignorance in a derogatory manner, I use ignorance in a defining manner of lack of knowledge. When it came in, it was so political. What's the word I want to use?
Politicized.
Politicized. That's the word I want to use. I don't know if it's proper. It was so politicized to where it became Democrat versus Republican. It became black versus white. It became rich versus poor. It became Baptist versus, Kojic. It became, every religious. And so you pick a side on which you think that the reason why I won't wear my mask, the reason why I'm not going to get a shot, the reason why I'm not going to, get the, follow, the protocol that's been established. It was the fear and the ignorance on, am I making the right decision or not? And I'm going to make a stance whether I know why I'm making a stance or not. That was the biggest disappointment, because you've seen people who needed help that wouldn't get help. You've seen
Right.
people who make adjustments who would make adjustments. You've seen people put people in harm way that shouldn't have put people in harm way,
Right.
because everyone was trying to figure out, where do I, in a world right now where you can't trust anything, where do I stand? Where do I bend? And is it worth the break if I break? That was scary. And to
Yeah.
be a leader and all that,
Mhm.
I found myself being a spiritual leader, right? Because in the greatest position in the world, president himself, he has a spiritual advisor. That means that he has someone that he's going to lean on and say, what does God say about this?
Mhm.
And that's scary when you have to be the voice of God in the middle of chaos.
Yeah.
And you got families, you have, husbands, you have, business owners, all of them looking to you for the answer on what to do. And you have to remove all bias out of everything and try to make the best educated decision with everything you have, and no one told you how to do it.
Yeah.
And see people do it ignorantly, with all the wrong morals and all the wrong values. See community members follow that and lose family members, or even, hinder their growth and development on long afterwards. That was the biggest catastrophic part for me to watch as a pastor, be part of, and even have to be in the middle of some of those decisions.
Absolutely. And you and your family took on, a very courageous role, early on, especially when the vaccinations were first introduced, and there was a lot of questions, and there was a lot of, like you said, a lot of fear and ignorance of, even understanding, some of the basic science or some of the basic, what we did know about a pandemic. And so that was a very brave role to take for your family. What I mean, obviously your faith, you had to have been led to making decisions. Um, how were you able to calm people, or talk to people about these decisions that they were needing to make on their own at that time?
It's very unique, right? So I'm about to say something. I don't know. I don't even know if you know this, right? So, I on top of all the hats I wear, I'm also still an employee. I've been working for the same company for over 20 years. So it's been the true balance of life, right? And I got a email, saying that if we didn't receive the vaccine, we would lose our job. And
Mm.
so, and in the middle of being a pastor, in the middle of being a father, a parent, and everything else, um, you know, I had to be a person myself. And I've never been the type of guy that took, you're going to judge me on this, but just pray for me when it's over with. I've never taken the flu vaccine. I've never, I'm not very highly medicated type of guy. I don't like medication. I just don't. I like to deal with everything. My wife tell you I have a headache out this world. I'm going to figure out how I can drink some apple cider vinegar, to calm it down, right? I just hate medication. So this is me. This is my morals, my values, right? Nothing on my wife, nothing on my children. If I teach my children, be you, be unapologetically you, but we be willing to pay the consequences of whatever decision you make. I tell my children, you're not grown until you can pay for your mistakes or your decisions. Just because you can, your age don't make you an adult. It's when you can truly pay for your decisions, right? So in all this, I never received a vaccination. And I even took a stance against my company, just because I didn't feel, not saying, it wasn't anything against the vaccine. But now I'm making that decision. But how do I, as a pastor, make the decision, but yet encourage, someone in my church who needs the vaccination because, of the age they are, or just because they don't need to gamble with their life, right? And I think it comes down to that decision right there. We have to be comfortable with who we are and what we do and why we do it. And that comes all the way full circle, beyond COVID, beyond, economical structure, whatever. You need to know who you are and why you do what you do. And I think that's the biggest problem. And I think God kind of shook it up in the social media world. No one has their own identity. That's why I'm so fearful, because I'm used to following the crowd. Now the crowd is split in 4 different areas. What do I do?
Right.
And so what I've done, what I did, and I still do, is tell people, find out your why, and don't let your why be someone else's why.
Mm.
Because at the end of the day, whatever decision you make, whether you lose your life, whether someone else, gains a benefit, no matter what it is, you're comfortable with what you did not gain or what you did gain. So we spent more time just helping people understand, what do you choose? What do you want? You be comfortable with that. This is not Baptist versus, you know, um, Catholicism. This is not Christian versus sinner. This is not Republican versus Democrat. This is life versus death.
Right.
And you have to be okay with that decision. So it was hard. So with that being said, and here we are, unvaccinated, but going to our communities and encouraging that we have these vaccinations right here for you to come get if you want it. Please, come out of your homes, come out of places. We'll come to you, pick you up, bring you out. Because it wasn't about me pushing my belief that this is not something that's needed, so I'm not going to bring it to my community. No, this is not something I wanted, but it's not saying it was something that was not needed. It was definitely needed. I believe it saved millions of lives. It just was a choice I made, that I, as me, as a person who don't take flu vaccines, who don't like aspirins, by the way, I don't want to be forced to put medicine in my body. It's just who I am.
Mhm.
So I don't know if that makes sense or not, but that's where we have to take a stance and truly tell people, stop following the crowd.
Right.
Follow your heart, man, and be okay with whatever you get. If you lose your life behind this, make sure your family know, you lost me because I made a decision that I was comfortable with, which people got to do every day with DNRs and stuff like that.
Right. And I think that was one of the lessons of the pandemic, is that it kind of forced us to have these conversations that we had not been wanting to have, about our belief systems, our values, the role of community, our health as a priority, which, definitely for me, that's very much part of my faith is, honoring my health and honoring the health of others. And so, all these things came to the forefront during this and having to make these decisions. And you're right, everyone was having to confront themselves and make the best decisions possible in the midst of a lot of misinformation and a lot of other pieces that were, like you said, the divisiveness and all that was, forcing people to kind of not really want to make a sound decision on either side. So there was, I mean, definitely, there were so many lessons in this whole period. Now, moving through these last 3 years,
Yeah.
and all the while you're helping with the public health piece, you're helping reconstruct, disasters, the homes that were just devastated by multiple disasters.
Yes.
Um, and as a pastor, like you said, you're having to lead people in a time where there was a lot of division and confusion. Um, Now where we are at, as we were talking earlier, is reconnecting community, rebuilding community, trying to understand how we are different than we were 3 years ago, and how to make use of that now. Um, what do you see happening? How do you feel communities are doing, and how do you feel like they are prioritizing, or maybe not, their health?
You know, um, there's a lot of different answers I can take with this, right? Because I believe what has happened is greater segregation, greater segregation. I think segregation amongst the race of the ranks that was not segregated before. And I think this is good though, right? Because you no longer have daughter following what grandmother did. You no longer have, mama doing what daddy did. I think what right now we have the greatest diverse in mindset that is going to allow a great reset of what's actually important. And I think we got more people thinking about that. And you see this in decisions being made on, just different resources have been made available, not just by the people who's in leadership before. You have people who are going out and they're creating opportunities. They're opening up businesses, like I touched on before, we bring in clinics to our communities. You
Yes.
have people who saw the need from a different lens. And I think our generation, I think it's Gen Z, my daughter was just saying today how they are you do it yourself generation. I think it's what they call themselves, the do it yourself generation. Well, they're doing, they was exposed to this is where I'm gonna put it, right? So one of my biggest disappointment in our government was about maybe I think 10 years ago when I can't remember what hurricane it was, but when I saw the lack of leadership that caused lots of people who tried to leave Galveston to get stranded on the
Oh,
freeway.
yes.
I think
That
it
was
was,
Ike. Uh-huh.
and so many people they died, right?
Mhm.
And it was so much negligence right there. And when I saw that, I'm like, that's a lack of leadership. I cannot believe our country was so reactive and not proactive to develop an exit plan, exit strategy, right? We had hurricanes before. Then I saw what happened to Hurricane Katrina, and how we could not get these poor people out of this state. We have millions of helicopters around the world. Why we can't fill them up and go get them out of there, families at a time? This is negligent of too many people trying to make decisions, right? And it built in me a desire to build systems that overcome little small obstacles. Well, guess what? We had a whole culture of the world who saw the negligence of leadership, the lack of preparation, how to respond. And you have children right now who are realizing that's never going to happen again. That's never going to happen again. We're starting to see that slowly by a little things in our communities happening. But I think what we're seeing also is people having to make their own decisions from a spiritual perspective, and
Yeah.
pastors is having to be okay with that. I have to be okay with that because now people who thought they had to go to church, they have to serve God, people now are choosing.
Mhm.
But what we're getting out of that is more pure presence.
Yes, yes.
More
I
pure presence.
agree. I
Yeah.
agree. There's been a lot of, because we've gone through a lot of, whether we personally or just watching the others struggle and suffer, the grieving of loss of lifestyle, the loss of loved ones, the loss of the world as it was. I mean, I think that really, like you said, it's time for a reset. where people are needing to make these choices for themselves. And there is a purity in that. You're right. Absolutely. I agree.
Whether it's family gatherings, whether it's church services, whether it's wherever people are showing up because they want to be there, not because they feel as though it's something I have to do. And you're starting to develop a true, honest presence, and it's becoming very warm. I really believe family reunions are never the same anymore. I mean, any gathering is not the same anymore. It's truly people who want to be there, and they're appreciating people a little different now.
Absolutely. What have you we were talking about, some of the great work you're doing in bringing, public health into the church, into your church. What other support systems have you noticed that have stepped up in the community that have become more prominent or essential? I mean, through the pandemic or since the pandemic, um, that really need our continued support and nurturing. What are those support systems?
I think one big thing for us here in this community is the disaster recovery. We've seen a huge presence that was not there before, of an understanding of a need of representation for small rural areas. And we've seen even Texas release certain, what I would call liaisons to come out and kind of work with that emergency readiness. How do we make sure we're ready? And even meetings are starting to happen right now to make sure we're ready, and we're not as reactive, we're more proactive. And so that's been really important. I think another great thing is just, the medical clinics, coming around, the vaccinations being available, understanding benefits. I think the greatest thing right now is just information, getting information, and it's two-way information, right? Because the information of what's available to come into these towns, but the information of what's actually in these towns. I don't think a lot of people know how many people are actually in these communities. And
Right.
so we're getting out there and letting them know, hey, we have in this one little area that you think is maybe 4 or 5 people. No, it's like 500 people in that one little area, and you never knew that. And so they didn't realize the need was that great. So I think right now is just the transfer of data, true data, data of what's available, what resources there are. I know people didn't even know the resource that was available as far as, I mean, we see now homes being built at no charge to families. I mean, no one knew this resource was there, and this untapped, information is coming in, and people are actually starting to get resources, and like I say, the clinic we're bringing in, they're going to be bringing in a lot of free services that people didn't even know was available. So I think that pure data, where's the need and where are the resources, and marrying them together so that we don't have the neglect that we've been having in the past.
Isn't that true? And it all goes back to this concept of sacred community, because I think all the solutions, um, we've, some of the big lessons over the many years, our council has served these underserved populations and communities, is that we find the resources. Like
Yes.
we may have to like scrape and dig and, figure it out, but we put together resources where other people say there were none.
Yes.
Um, and the biggest resource is the person themselves, right? Is the people that live within that community that are desperately trying to build community and connection, but there's been neglect, there's been lack of guidance, there's been an ignorance of not knowing that they're even there. And so, like you said, I agree. I mean, even in this time where there's so much information and technology, and yet we don't even know the space we live in, or what's around us, whether it's the natural landscape or the resources. And that was what was revealed through floods and through pandemic for us, is
I think
that
neglect and abuse. We have to use that word abuse, right? Yeah, some people who didn't need it in the past, that made people um, uh, sway away from wanting to utilize it in certain communities because it was so abused.
Mhm.
I think that's one thing, and neglect and abuse. And one more thing I found out in this disheartening, you wouldn't believe how many people. So our nonprofit organization did the case management for, like I say, out of the almost 300 homes, we did 90% of the case management. So you're looking over 200 homes we did case management for. You wouldn't believe how many people we had to turn away because they were not properly structured to receive support, whether it's from FEMA or anyone, because they didn't know I need to get the taxes in my name, or I need to get the taxes caught up, or I need to get this certain amount of property. If I'm staying on grandmama's property, I should have got this converted to my name. I mean,
Right.
so many things that people don't realize, that little nuances that they're neglecting to go out and update with the city and the state is hindering them to get the major support they can get. I mean, I think that's the greatest message we have to get out there now, knowing that we're so vulnerable in certain situations like we're facing. You don't want to come to that point where you need help and you lack the structure in your own estate to receive the help.
Absolutely. So it goes back to education on just the basic understanding of your own family home and the resources that you need to tap. And I mean, and I think that that's, you mentioned about is the awareness of the rural community and the importance of the rural community. And I think especially in Texas, that's so different today than what it was when I was a child, because rural back then was, a couple of people in a county where there was, farms and nothing, nothing else. But around all the major cities of Texas today, there's development, there's growth, there's push from within the big cities outward, there's migration from other states. So there's so much churning and changing. And I think that also, caught a lot of people, especially local leaders, off guard when the pandemic hit, because all of a sudden you're trying to mobilize your public health systems that maybe weren't that efficient before, and you're trying to you penetrate into these communities where all of a sudden there are large populations that weren't even understood. And so yeah, it has been a huge adjustment. Like, very quickly we've had to adjust to try to figure out how to reach people.
Yeah, yeah. I think what we notice also, people are finding out that they're using information as currency.
Ah, yes.
And that's good in one way and it's bad in one way, because people are now willing to give anything if they feel like I can exchange my data for something I need. Some people are taking advantage of that, and so
Yes.
we need to make sure we're very conscious on how we do that. But now we're realizing, if I can, before, I think the census was so frowned upon. Oh, I don't want to answer the census. The census is trying to know, but now we need that census because that's only we can
Yep.
get true data. So we can get
Absolutely.
what we need in certain communities.
Yeah, I mean, knowledge is power, right?
Yeah.
And like you said, it can be used or misused, and that, we've encountered that too. Is we're desperately trying to empower and educate communities, and with just basic knowledge of how how their community is structured, who's doing what within their community. And sometimes, yes, people don't know what to do with that, or it gets used in the wrong ways. So yeah, so there's a lot of room, and I feel very strongly, especially for men and women who are spiritual leaders in our communities. These times are especially hard. They've been very challenging, and I think that the Christ model is that you have to be out in the community,
Yeah,
right?
you have to.
You have to walk in those communities to really understand and to really connect.
You have to be seen, felt, and even sometimes heard. Less heard than seen and felt. We got to go out there and we got to hear more than we're being heard. I think so many leaders are so used to talking all the time, right? And we have all the answers. My wife taught me that, one of the greatest lessons she taught me, babe, stop coming with all the answers. I don't want you to have all the answers, but first listen to what's wrong. There's a pastor, we used to have all the answers. We got to stop. We got to stop talking and literally go out and just listen. Go out to, school board meetings,
Mhm.
listen. Go out to community meetings, listen. That's what I got a chance to do when I met you. That's what I got a chance to do when I met Sonia Myers. I went in my community and she sent me into my community with resources to help my community. And I could have went in like I was, the hero syndrome. I didn't. I went in with the zero syndrome. I needed to hear what was going on. I could have just sent people, but I went. I sat amongst our people. I talked to our people. I heard what was going on beyond their house. And it opened my ears up so much. And I think that's what we got to do as leaders. We have to go out, close our mouths, open our eyes, open our hearts, and close our nose. You know, sometimes close your eyes. It may not smell great. It may not look great. Get beyond all that and now open your heart and open your ears and really hear what's really going out there. What do the people, what do they lack? Because they don't have to tell you what they don't know, but if you listen to them long enough, you'll learn real fast what they don't know. And it's our
Right.
job now to respond to what they don't know.
Exactly. I mean, and I think that that is what you've done so well in our communities is the ability to see hope where others see hopelessness.
Yeah,
And you know, I mean, I think, you know, we're told to see to, you know, seek God in one another, right? I mean, God exists between us, within us, and there are lessons there, the messages that we're receiving through one another, that are that's the only way to receive them is if we're out and connecting and listening.
yeah,
And so it's definitely and I think that this discussion today, Pastor Clyde, and I think, you know, a lot of the wisdom that you're sharing, you know, again, only emphasizes that when we as a society look for leaders in the wrong places, we are misled. And
yeah,
I've always said, you know, leaders are local. Leaders are those that know the community, that have spent time in the suffering
right.
of the community. And I think that if we can return or find our way to that point, um, then those civil servants that are there to listen to us and you know and respond to our needs would do a better job.
Yeah,
But the leadership does, you know, does exist in wonderful communities and places that we don't see or hear about. And so I'm so thankful that you spent this time to talk to us and to share your insight, your wisdom, your perspective. And I think there's so much, I think that you could write a book on this because so many lessons from so many different areas that you've been called to respond to.
yeah,
Basic needs of God's children has certainly been on your plate for several years now.
yeah. You're definitely right. And but I gotta say accolades to you, Maria. Um, I tell you, to see you do what you do was so empowering. It was so, it was so humbling, you know, because us as pastors, we think when we get in the pulpit, we're making such a big difference. But you had the tennis shoes on, you had the jeans on, you had the tablet in your hand, and you going door to door. You were doing great. You're doing great ministry. You've taken your community in Montgomery County on your shoulders, and you carry it like it's light. And I know it's not. And so you keep doing what you're doing out there. You encourage me to do what I do. You encourage so many others. And it's you're making a major, major impact on little girls, on little girls. And so you are incarnating, if that's the word I'm using properly, you know, in your community, you're developing you little youths. And so just know the investment you're making is going to grow up and you're going to see a harvest of soldiers who look like you in the future.
Oh, that's such a blessing. Thank you. Thank you so much, Pastor Clyde. I really take those words to heart. I you know, I think that we've we've all been through so much, and sometimes you do question, you know, uh are people listening? Are people learning? Are they trying to do better? Are they blocking out all the negativity and all the, you know, the noise that gets people off track and leads them down the wrong paths? And you hope so much for people, and so you wonder, you know, but you just keep, you know, plowing the fields and sowing the seeds and hoping that they you know have the opportunity to take root. So I appreciate that, and I do pray for that flourishing of young people in our country, because I do think that's, you know, that piece worries me, is that when a generation gives up on its young, that society is doomed.
You're
And
100%
we
right.
can never give up on our young. We can
No,
never.
no. It's time to pour into them. It's time to pour
That's
into them.
right. Pour into them. Absolutely. So thank you so much. God bless you, and God bless your beautiful family and the work that you have ahead. I hope it continues to touch just countless lives and really makes a difference. And I look forward to our continued partnership.
Same here, same here. And thank you for having me tonight. And I'll make sure that my lovely wife and family know the kind words.
Thank you.